Everyone's heard the advice. Your financial planner, your neighbor, your brother-in-law at Christmas. You've worked for it. Spend it. Enjoy it while you can. And they're not wrong, not exactly. But there's a part of that conversation nobody mentions. Two numbers, and if you don't know them before you start spending, the system will quietly take a large portion of what you pull out. The first number is £50,270. That's the point at which HMRC shifts from taking 20% of your pension withdrawals to taking 40%. £1 over that line, and the tax rate doubles. Most people have no idea this applies to them, because most people never imagined their retirement income would ever get near it. But add up a SIPP withdrawal, a part-time income, rental income, and the state pension coming in a few years down the line, and you'd be surprised how quickly the numbers stack up. The second number is £23,250. That's the capital threshold used by your local authority to decide whether they'll contribute to your care home costs. Above it, you pay everything yourself. Below it, they step in. This number sits quietly in the background while a lot of people make spending decisions, or rather, don't make them, based entirely on a vague fear of needing care one day. These two numbers quietly govern more retirement finances than almost anything else. Yet most of the advice you'll hear never mentions either of them. So yes, spend it, but spend it the right way. Before I walk you through 6 things you should genuinely be spending on in retirement, we need to close one gap first. How do you actually take money out of your pension without handing 40% of it straight back to HMRC? John retired at 61. Not because he planned to. The pandemic reshuffled things, his company restructured, and suddenly he had time he hadn't budgeted for. He had £250,000 sitting in his SIPP. A decent amount. He knew it was there, but he didn't touch it. No ski trip with his son, no new car. The kitchen he'd been meaning to redo for a decade, still the same tired cupboards. He told himself he was being sensible, responsible. He'd wait until the money felt safer, until he had a clearer picture of what was coming. What he was actually doing was applying a rule book that no longer applied. There's a pattern researchers have tracked for years now called the retirement spending smile. The idea is straightforward: your spending doesn't stay flat in retirement. In your early years, roughly 55 to 70, costs actually go up. You have the time and the health to travel, to fix things around the house, to take on new hobbies. Then spending dips a bit in your mid-70s as life naturally slows. And then, for many people, it climbs again in the final stretch as care needs increase. The old rule, you'll spend less when you retire, came from a world where retirement meant armchairs and modest holidays. It doesn't describe most people's reality now. It certainly didn't describe John's, and here's what makes it worse. According to ONS data on life expectancy in England, the most common age of death currently sits around 85 to 87. If you retire at 55, that gives you roughly 30 years, but the state pension age is currently 67. That means there's a gap, a 12-year window, where you have no state pension coming in yet. Your body is still capable of doing the things you actually want to do, and your pot is sitting there waiting. That window is the one that matters most, and most people sleepwalk through it. I've watched this happen more times than I'd like. Someone reaches 65 in reasonable health, money in the bank, and they're still flinching at the restaurant bill. Not because they can't afford it, because they've spent the last decade training themselves to hold back. By the time they feel ready to spend, the knees have started going, and the long-haul flights feel like too much. I used to think the 4% withdrawal rule solved all of this. Take out 4% a year, leave the rest invested, never touch the capital. It felt clean, safe. A few years ago I turned down a ski trip with my son over it, didn't want to go over the number. Looking back, that was a mistake in priorities, not a success in planning. The rule isn't wrong as a starting point. But it was designed as a floor, not a ceiling. And it was never designed to account for the fact that your ability to enjoy money has a shelf life that your money doesn't. Not being able to spend in your 60s because you're saving it for your 80s isn't caution. It's a trade-off with a very real cost. You're just paying it in time and experience rather than pounds. You know you should be spending more in these early years. But when you look at that pension balance, something locks up. Part of that is habit. Part of it is fear. And a large part of it is that nobody has explained clearly how to actually take the money out without the system taking a cut. That's what we need to look at next. Let's go back to John for a moment. He's been sitting on £250,000 in his SIPP. He finally decides it's time. The kitchen needs doing. He wants a decent used car. And there's a trip to Portugal he and his wife have been putting off for 3 years. He works out he needs around £40,000 to cover it all, and he puts in a withdrawal request for the full amount. What happens next catches him completely off guard. The pension provider releases the money, but a large portion of it never reaches John's account, because the moment that £40,000 lands, HMRC treats it as income for that tax year. Add in the state pension he started drawing the year prior and a small rental income from a garage he lets out, and his total income for the year pushes well past £50,270. Everything above that line gets taxed at 40%, not 20%. 40. John wanted £40,000 to improve his life. He got considerably less than that. The rest went to the Treasury. This is not an edge case. It catches a significant number of people in their early retirement years, particularly those who have a few different income streams and don't realize how quickly they combine. So what's the alternative? The approach that actually works involves two things used together: UFPLS withdrawals from your pension, and your ISA. UFPLS stands for Uncrystallized Funds Pension Lump Sum. It sounds complicated, but the mechanic is simple. Instead of taking a large lump sum from your pension in one go, you take smaller amounts across the year or across several years. Each UFPLS withdrawal comes with 25% tax-free built in automatically. The remaining 75% is taxable income, so you control the size of each withdrawal to keep your total taxable income below the thresholds that matter. For the 2026 to 2027 tax year, those thresholds are: personal allowance at £12,570. You pay nothing on income up to that point. Basic rate at 20% between £12,570 and £50,270. Higher rate at 40% above £50,270. The strategy is to stay below £50,270. Withdraw from your SIPP in amounts that, once combined with any other income you have, keep you inside the basic rate band, or ideally closer to the personal allowance where possible. Now, what if you need more money than that ceiling allows? That's where the ISA comes in. A stocks and shares ISA produces no taxable income at all. Withdrawals from it don't appear on your tax return. They don't count toward your income for the year. So if you need £40,000 for a kitchen renovation and a car, you don't pull all of it from your SIPP. You pull what you can from the SIPP without crossing the higher rate threshold, and you top up the rest from your ISA, the result. John could have had his £40,000. HMRC would have seen very little of it. The difference isn't a loophole or a technicality, it's just using the accounts in the right order, at the right size, in the right year. The people who pay 40% on pension withdrawals aren't making bad decisions. They're making uninformed ones. Nobody sat them down and explained that the sequence matters as much as the amount. Once you understand that your ISA and your SIPP aren't just two pots of money, they're two different tax environments that can work together, the whole picture changes. When you've got that sorted, you stop asking, "Can I afford this?" and start asking, "What do I actually want to spend it on?" Which is a much better question to be asking in your 60s. If you're working out how to do this for your own situation, drop a comment below. Let me know how you're currently planning to draw from your pension. It helps me understand what to cover in more depth next. So you've got the withdrawal strategy working. The money is coming out cleanly, the tax bill is manageable, and for possibly the first time in years, you're looking at your finances and thinking, right, I can actually do this. The question is, do what exactly? Here are 6 categories worth spending on in early retirement. Not because some financial framework says so, but because the evidence and the regret patterns of people who didn't points clearly in this direction. The first is your home, not necessarily a bigger one. Downsizing often makes sense, but downsizing doesn't have to mean downgrading. If you're spending more time at home than you ever have, the quality of that space matters more than it ever did. A better heating system, a kitchen that actually works for the way you cook now, a bathroom that's easier to use on a bad morning. Last month I had the kitchen floor redone entirely. Non-slip surface, better lighting throughout. Someone told me I was wasting money on a house that was perfectly fine. But my knees at this age don't forgive cold tiles the way they used to. Comfort compounds quietly. It's worth paying for early. The second is travel, specifically the kind that requires physical stamina. Long-haul flights, walking holidays, anything involving luggage and steps and early starts. This is the category with the hardest deadline. Not a financial deadline, a physical one. The window between healthy enough to enjoy it fully and it's just a bit much now closes faster than most people expect. Spending on a 3-week trip to Japan at 63 is a completely different experience to the same trip at 76. Both are valuable. They're not interchangeable. Third, the purchase you've been talking yourself out of for years. The car, the boat, the woodworking setup in the garage. Whatever it is, the thing that keeps coming up and keeps getting deferred. There's a name for this pattern: deferral regret. And it shows up consistently in studies on end-of-life reflections. Not I spent too much. Almost always, it's I waited too long. Fourth is private dental and healthcare. NHS waiting times for certain procedures now stretch into months, sometimes longer. Private dental care costs more up front, but the alternative is waiting in discomfort or letting something small become something serious. Healthcare inflation consistently runs above general inflation, which means the cost of waiting isn't neutral. It compounds. Spending on your health at 62 is almost always cheaper than managing the consequences of not doing so at 72. Fifth is community and activity. Golf club membership, tennis, pickleball, which has grown remarkably in the UK over the past few years among the 60-plus age group. The research on longevity is fairly consistent here. Social connection and regular physical activity are among the strongest predictors of healthy aging. Not supplements, not expensive retreats, showing up somewhere regularly and knowing people. The membership fee is not a luxury. It's infrastructure. Sixth, and this one matters more than most people realize, is giving while living. Helping an adult child with a house deposit, contributing to a grandchild's education. A meaningful gift to someone who needs it now, rather than an inheritance they'll receive at 60 when their own financial pressures have largely passed. Money given at the right moment in someone's life has a different kind of value. It's worth thinking about that timing deliberately, rather than leaving it entirely to chance. None of these are indulgences. They're the categories where spending in your 60s produces returns, in health, in experience, in relationships, that no savings account can replicate. But here's what stops most people from acting on any of them. It's not lack of money, it's one specific fear, and it's bigger than all 6 of these categories combined. The fear of the care home bill. This fear is real. I'm not going to dismiss it. The image most people carry is vivid: selling the family home, writing checks for £45,000 a year, watching a lifetime of savings disappear into a system that feels indifferent to everything you built. It's the single biggest reason people in their 60s hold back from spending. Not laziness, not indifference. A genuine, deeply held fear that if they spend now, there won't be enough left when it matters most, and it shapes everything. The holiday not booked, the kitchen left as it was. The car that's fine, actually, it'll do another few years. But here's what most people don't know about how the care system in England actually works. If your total capital, savings, investments, the value of certain assets, sits above £23,250, your local authority will not contribute to your care home costs. You pay everything yourself. That's the upper capital limit under current English care funding rules. But if your capital falls below that threshold, the council steps in and begins funding a significant portion of your care. Below £14,250, they cover almost all of it. Now consider two women, both 65, both with £100,000 in savings and a similar outlook on life. Margaret spends her 60s carefully. She doesn't travel much, doesn't renovate, doesn't give money away. She holds on to that £100,000 because she's certain she'll need it for care one day. She's right that she might need care. But when she enters a care home at 84, her local authority looks at her capital, sees it's well above £23,250 and tells her she's self-funding. She pays the full rate, around £45,000 a year in many parts of England, until her savings erode down to that threshold. Then, and only then, does the council begin contributing. Carol spent her 60s differently. She travelled when she could still manage the long flights. She sorted the house. She helped her daughter with a deposit. By the time she needed care, her capital was closer to the threshold. The council's means test looked different for Carol. She reached council funding support much sooner. At 90, both women are in care. Their financial positions are remarkably similar. But Carol had 20 years of living between now and then. Margaret had 20 years of waiting. The system is not designed to reward people who hoard. It's designed to use your assets first, then step in. That's not a flaw in the system, it's the explicit mechanism. And once you understand that, the calculation looks entirely different. To be clear, this is not about deliberately running down your assets to game the system. Deliberately depriving yourself of assets to reduce care costs, what's legally called deprivation of assets, can be challenged by local authorities and can result in you being assessed as if you still had those assets. That's a path worth avoiding. This is about something different. It's about recognizing that spending on a good life now, on health, travel, your home, the people you love, is not reckless. It is, in many cases, the rational choice. You are not preserving wealth for yourself. You are preserving it for a means test. The system was built to make sure people contribute what they have before public funds step in. There's a logic to that, but the unintended consequence is that a lot of people in reasonable financial health are living smaller lives than they need to, in order to protect a pot of money that the council will largely claim anyway once the threshold is crossed. You can spend that money on a care home you had no say in choosing, at a point in life when you can't enjoy anything else. Or you can spend a portion of it now, on terms you control, at an age when it actually changes how your days feel. The system will use your money either way. The only question is whether you get to decide what it's spent on first. Let's bring this together. Front-loading your retirement spending, putting more of your money to work in your 60s, when you have the health and the time to actually use it, is not reckless. It is not short-sighted. What's actually reckless is pulling large sums from your pension without understanding where the tax thresholds sit and handing 40% of it to HMRC without realizing it was avoidable. What's actually short-sighted is holding on to a pot of money for decades out of fear, only for a means test to determine how it gets spent anyway. The framework is straightforward. Use your SIPP and your ISA together, in the right sequence, to stay inside the tax bands that work in your favor. Spend deliberately on the things that genuinely improve your life now, your home, your health, your experiences, the people you care about, and understand what the care system actually does with your money so that fear stops making decisions on your behalf. Your money, your life. The plan should reflect both. If you haven't yet worked out how to draw from your SIPP in a way that keeps you comfortably below £50,270, and how to use your ISA to bridge the gap, that's exactly what I'm covering in the next video. A full breakdown of the safest drawdown sequencing with the numbers walked through clearly. Subscribe so you don't miss it when it goes up.